So I'm Maeve Power. I am one of the Canvas directors here at VPIRG, as well as doing a lot of communications and organizing around COVID-19. And this webinar is part of that work. But today we're going to be discussing the VPIRG Summer Canvas. It's an institution that some might say. The door-to-door canvas has been at the heart of VPIRG's work since 1985. Which was the first year that a small group of passionate young activists took to the streets, roads, mountain tracks, you name it, of Vermont and began a political movement through the simple act of just having face-to-face conversations. But even before that, you know, since our founding in 1972, VPIRG's work has really been rooted in the idea that when we make an effort to connect with people and to build a movement around a common issue, we really can accomplish big things, and we have done so. So over the last several decades, our summer canvas has grown to become a really beloved summer tradition for our canvassers and also for our members and supporters all over the state. And you know, what once was 10 to 20 canvassers knocking on doors in and around Chittenden County primarily has really become a force of 70 plus canvassers each summer. And back in 2017, I think we even had over 100 canvassers, which was a lot. Walking, biking, talking to residents in all 251 cities, towns, and gores in Vermont. And the conversations that we are able to have with people end up informing all of the work that we do in the State House in the winter. So the impact of our summer canvas is pretty exponential, as many, and I presume many of the people watching this know and understand. But in addition to building grassroots support for pressing public interest issues, we also give passionate young people a voice and teach them the skills that they'll need to be able to change the world for the better in a variety of ways. So today I'll be speaking with two such change makers that started out on the canvas. We have Becca White, state representative from Hartford, or more specifically, the village of White River Junction, and Ashley Orgain, Director of Sustainability and Advocacy at Seventh Generation, which, for those of you who don't know, is a leading eco-friendly cleaning, paper, and personal care product company based right here in Burlington, Vermont. So I'll give the floor to each of you for a couple minutes to just give some background on yourself. How about you, Becca?
Sure, yeah, I can start. Yeah, so I am a current state representative, as Maeve said, and I served, this is my first term, and prior to that, I served on my select board. I grew up in Hartford, which is the town that I represent. I grew up in the village of Wilder, which is right next door to the village of White River Junction, which is where I live now. And before that, I went to UVM, which is kind of a big funnel for the VPIRG canvas. And I was a history major, which ultimately somehow in my life that's led me to political stuff, as well as I worked for the solar company SunCommon after graduating, and currently work for Efficiency Vermont. So a little bit about me. I'm married. My husband's Dylan. Fun fact, he was also a VPIRG canvasser. And we did not meet that way, but it was a nice, one of those first date things you learn about someone. We have a lovely home with chickens and a cat. So that's me in a nutshell.
There's a lot of VPIRG founded couples. So we take pride in that too. Ashley?
Hey everyone, good to see you. I am Ashley Orgain. As Maeve said, I lead the advocacy and sustainability team at Seventh Generation. I've been there for about 11 years, and the focus of my team is really to figure out how we can bring more sustainable products to everyone, and also how we can use our voice as a voice for good and helping to create change in the world. I've been on the VPIRG board, and most recently in the last 2 years as board president. And I also started out as a canvasser when I moved to Vermont in 1998 and got the summer job that was the summer job of a lifetime. It changed the course of my career and my personal life, and I'm glad to bring and share some of those stories with you today.
Wonderful. Well, we're very excited to hear all about them. I'll just say that like I said, I'm one of the Canvas directors currently. I joined the Canvas back in 2018 as the Office and Human Resources Administrator, so doing a lot of the background work of the Canvas. But seeing all of those inspiring young faces coming in the door every single day, ready to go and inform and mobilize people all over the state, really inspired me to want to be a part of it in that way. So I joined as a fellow, and I work in the State House on climate and clean energy issues. And then during the summer, I direct the Canvas. This year, obviously, is a little bit different, as some people might expect. So we're doing a virtual Canvas so that we're not having to knock on doors all over the state and put anybody in harm's way. But I'll talk a little bit more about what that's going to look like at the end. And just for posterity, we are going to be recording this webinar and putting it on our website. So you can visit there at www.vpirg.org/COVID-19/webinars. I visit it a lot, so I would appreciate other people doing so. But yeah, we'll get right into it. So I would love to hear from each of you about your experiences on the Canvas. What was your favorite part of the job? Ashley?
Perfect. Oh, great. Happy to jump right in. So I started on the Canvas back in 1998, and it was a summer where I had just moved to Vermont, and I was walking around Burlington and I saw these posters that said, work for the environment, get a summer job. And I was like, that is speaking to me right there, because I was an environmentalist at heart and looking for an opportunity to take what I was learning in school, which was studying environmental studies, and put it to practice in the real world. And much of what Maeve kind of set up this conversation about was really what I got to experience firsthand. I got to work with an incredibly passionate group of people who cared a lot about the world that they were living in at the moment, and also about the world that they wanted to create for the future. And much of that really was about creating change on how our state was holding certain companies or other stakeholders accountable for the role they were playing, either improving the environment or really worsening the environment. So to be able to work on a campaign where you're out there, you have a really clear kind of commitment to change and a really clear, if you will, kind of idea about what's going to help create that change, and go out and essentially be an educator, be someone who gets to educate and engage and listen to people and understand their point of view, understand, what their concerns are, what their interests are, and to be able to bring that back to an organization and help think about, okay, how can we use what we have just heard, what we have just learned to inform and improve, our strategies and our tactics and our plans. So it was this combination of working with an incredibly passionate group of people, getting out into the community and talking to incredibly passionate people. Vermont is a state of citizens grounded in values. I mean, everywhere you go, people have very strong beliefs and core values that they demonstrate in how they live and how they vote and what they buy. And to be able to hear about those values and how those values then translate into the organizations that they support, and then how they support the work at a state level. I think it's just is a great opportunity to connect those dots as a youth. When I was 18 at that time, to broader change in the world was just a great launching point for me. In my career as environmentalist.
Wow. Yeah, actually you said it. I mean, that tight-knit group of folks, when you're in the Canvas, that was pivotal for me. Because I started at VPIRG when I was 17, like I wasn't even 18. I don't even know how they let me canvas that first year. I had to get like a parent waiver or something for camping trips. But just to have that tight-knit group of folks who were really dedicated towards one thing and were doing it day in and day out, that was life-changing for me. what I enjoyed most about the job was actually being able to explore different parts of Vermont. I started canvassing in 2011, and I'm a Vermonter. I grew up here, but I had not been to almost anywhere we had gone on the canvas. I'd never been to Bristol, Vermont, the places that just seemed like so close yet so far away, that I was able to meet people at their home and then have a real conversation with them. That was huge. So for me, that was my favorite part, was just getting to know people. And even if it's a short conversation, you really do get a flavor for the community when you're doing a whole street or a section of streets, and just getting to know that area. I feel a deep sense of place because of the VPIRG canvas. I'll still like drive around for my regular job, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I know who lives there, and this is like years later. So that's definitely my favorite part, is seeing that tight-knit community, both the canvassers themselves and then meeting folks in the field who either love VPIRG or have never heard of VPIRG, and getting to take the time to get to know them and share the values that VPIRG is talking about. So yeah.
Yeah, I know that feeling of driving around Vermont, being like, I canvassed that road, and I remember those people. It's a pretty great feeling. Yeah, it definitely grounds you really well. So I also appreciate that. Well, I guess, that kind of leads us into, how do you think your experience on the canvas shaped your path in life and in your respective careers, particularly as female leaders working to progress change?
Yeah, I'll start this time. So I was very fortunate where my year at VPIRG had a lot of women who were in the director role or in the field manager role, which means that they were either my direct supervisors or I was kind of working with them throughout. And I was really shaped by many of the women who were on the canvas, both as the directors, but then it's just like friends who later years I still like see what their lives are doing, and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm like so proud of them. And one person who was really pivotal in my career was Jessica Edgerly Walsh, and Ben Walsh, I'll give him credit too. Which is because I'm an extrovert. I love talking to people, and my first year, the conversation that happened early on was if I wanted to do street canvassing, which is the fun. Vermont has very few big streets with lots of people that you can canvass. So in reality, it was Church Street canvassing. But I was trained by Jessica on how to do effective street canvassing. And I just felt like I was making like this huge impact because it was one of the first real street canvassing operations for a Vermont-based campaign. And out of that, Jessica, years later when I was graduating, reached out when I was thinking about graduating for a job at Suncommon. So like directly from VPIRG, I found a woman mentor who then brought me into another organization. And that just train has shaped the way that my career path has moved. And on top of that, some of the folks I canvassed with, like Jay Hooper, for example, I always pick on him. He's now a state representative as well. And I was his director for the VPIRG canvas in 2012. So it not only brought me to women leaders who later helped me in my career, but in a way I feel like I was able to bring along others at the same time as I've progressed in my career. And I've seen VPIRGers who have truly done important things, in part using the skills that they got at VPIRG. So that's my fun story around the VPIRG 2011 and 2012 canvas.
I love to hear the story that there were so many women in leadership during your time, Becca. That's such an inspiration and honestly, such a step change from my experience. Back in the day when I was there were no women in leadership roles. And so it's amazing, a real sea change at the organization that I have been able even just to witness in the last 20 years. It's really commendable. So I would say, what did I learn? To Becca's point as well, there were a lot of skills that I learned on the job there that I still utilize today. And unlike her, I'm an introvert. So it was actually really hard to think about signing up for a role that required me to put myself out there and knock on some stranger's door and then try to engage them in conversation and learn from them and share a point of view and ask for their support. I mean, that was a real challenge for me. But, getting back to our earlier points, because I had such a deep passion for the work that I was doing and the change that I wanted to help catalyze in our beautiful state, I just kept pushing through. And so I think at that point in my life, it really, I was 18 years old, helping to build the confidence that I could go out there and do things that at first blush might not seem that easy. And that you just you follow your heart, you follow your passion, and you can be confident that you'll find your way. So that, that skill set of getting over kind of the fears that I had as an individual, and then also building that skill set of being able to really lay out a clear and compelling story and case and argument, if you will. Also, I mean, we're basically making a case for the kind of policies and practices that we want to see embodied by our state, and to be able to make a compelling case that gets someone to see that, oh yeah, that's the life I want. That's the community I want to live in. That's the state, policy I want to support. Takes a bit of work. And so that also was a skill set that I built on the canvas.
Yeah, I also felt that way. The first day, as we call them, O days or orientation days, it can be so nerve-wracking just going up to a door and knowing that you're about to enter into a conversation of, the topics that we're told never to talk about with strangers, politics, and especially on their doorstep, really entering their space. But as you do it, you begin to get a better understanding of human nature and what people, how to communicate with people in a really effective way. I've really benefited from that myself. And just another thing on the gender dynamics of the canvas that you both brought up. It's been so amazing to even in the last 2 years watch the development of our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at VPIRG, and just recognizing that when we have a balance of genders in leadership positions, it really makes a difference in the entire environment and workplace environment of the canvas. So we've really made a lot of strides there, and thank you both for recognizing that. But actually, Ashley, do you have any thoughts on that as a board member? You're muted.
Thank you. Can't tell you how often that actually happens. I've had the chance over the last 3 years as a board member to see this program be if you will, recommended as a pillar of how VPIRG, prepares its staff, its team, and the organization for the future. Something I feel like even at 7th Generation has been core to our work in the last 3 years. And I so deeply respect and commend them for making commitments and setting a plan and setting priorities against DEI work, and really pushing on them with as much kind of passion as they do all of the programs that they run year round. I mean, they're caring as much for their staff and how they train them and how they show up and how they support them as they are for kind of the policies that they're pushing around climate or environmental health or government reform. And so I really commend them on that, because it's not easy. As I said, I work at 7th Generation. We launched a DEI program about the same time, about 3 years ago. And a lot of the topics that you start unpacking are really sticky, and they're really tricky, and they're hard to get at the heart of figuring out like what you can do as an individual in the organization, what you can do as an organization at large, because everyone comes to it with a different life experience. So again, I commend VPIRG for making a commitment to do this work and then being really thoughtful about how they're gonna plan and do the work over time.
Definitely.
Is that kind of what you were looking for, Maeve? I'm happy to.
For sure.
Okay.
No, absolutely. I think just also, being able to see the way that it actually helps us succeed in ways that we didn't expect has been really, really rewarding. And just being a part of it myself has been really rewarding. So wanted to touch on that. But, before we move into just the power of grassroots activism and why the Canvas is such a great model for it, do either of you have any more remarks about your experiences on the Canvas? Any favorite moments that you wanted to mention, or no?
Oh gosh, I have one. This is like my go-to canvassing story that I always tell folks. And I think even Professor Richard Watts, if you're familiar with him, he had a thing where he asked folks for their best Canvas story, and I was like, okay, I have the cream of the crop Canvas story. So I was canvassing, riding my bike, and unsurprisingly, up this dirt road, and I get to this house, and I knock on the door, and an older woman comes out, and she says, we never donate, ever. We've never donated. And I'm looking at my list, and it says that this is someone who donates $100 every year. So I'm like, either I have the wrong address, or this woman is like not telling me the truth. And I did the rule that you're never supposed to do, which is I looked at the name. And the name on it was an older man, or just a man. And I didn't say anything, and she was like, I'm not going to give you any money. So I was like, that's fine. So I leave, and I go to the house up the street, and I knock on that door, and they say, yeah, actually, our dad used to give every single year $100 without telling our mom, and he passed away this year. So we're going to give you $200. And so they donated, and I was like blown away by that story. And then the craziest thing happened. Like within that next week, I'm at another town, completely different town, and I knock on a door, and this family is talking to me, and the woman they decide to donate, and she's like, you know what, this is going to sound so funny, but our dad used to donate $100 every year without telling our mom, and our dad just passed away, and we would really like to become sustainers in his honor. And I was like, I can't even explain to you how crazy it is. I think I knocked on your mom and your brother's door. And it turned out it was in fact the same family. And to this day, I'm like, how could you, what a crazy Canvas story. Yeah. So there you go.
All right, hands down, I can't beat that. I have horror stories. I'll tell you that. The story of getting bit by a dog, but no, I mean, what I remember, over 20 years ago, what I remember are just, like Becca was saying, the conversations that you have. I mean, spending time on someone's front porch, or that person who invites you into their backyard on an incredibly hot day and gives you some lemonade and says, go put your feet in my pond and let's chat is just what I love the most. Getting to meet people and to hear their stories and to feel their passion for the same kinds of stuff that I was out there working hard for. Mm-hmm. Good memories.
Yeah. It's definitely very powerful. Lots of really wonderful memories and lots of angry dogs, but that's okay. That's
lots of angry dogs.
Roll with the punches. You learn to become pretty resilient on the Canvas, I'll say that.
And bring dog mace. That's the secret.
We have a very specific dog training, how to deal with dogs. So it's a big deal. But I guess just, moving into Vermont, how do you feel the Canvas plays a role in Vermont politics and more generally our political culture here in Vermont? And Becca, you are a state legislator, so now you have both sides of it.
Well, it is great to see you, Maeve, in the State House along with the other advocates. And I think you actually spoke a little bit at the beginning about this, Ashley, which is it's about holding folks accountable. And I think especially in the state house. It's one thing for politicians or companies even to say that they support something or they're aligned with the mission that VPIRG might have, and it's another thing to actually act on those things. And something that I'm new to the game of politics as a state rep, but something I really appreciate about VPIRG is always bringing it back to the people who are advocating for it. It's not that Maeve herself is in the State House every day just because she cares. She's doing it on behalf of a whole group of people who in part have either found out because of the canvas of the message that VPIRG is working on, or just have come forward and said that they support it in other ways. So I think the role that VPIRG plays is in fact like bringing those constituents back to reps in a way that we don't have a lot of other organizations that truly bring that level of individual, those individuals into the State House in the same way. So that's the role that I see VPIRG playing.
Right.
Sorry, Maeve, my internet was a little unstable when you asked the question, so I want to make sure I got it right. What was the question?
Just talking about how you feel the canvas plays a role in Vermont's political culture and grassroots organizing in general.
I mean, Becca nailed it. So true. I mean, it's bringing the people of bringing the voice of the people to the State House, and there's no organization in the state that has the most members that get to be represented in that way. So you think about the diversity in just that, the share of voice that VPIRG is able to bring on these issues compared to other organizations. It's impressive. It's powerful. And I think, for individuals who don't have a chance themselves to go and speak directly to their reps, to have that confidence that there's an organization out there that's going to be doing that on their behalf, is important.
Exactly.
Keeping people engaged.
Yeah. And, this is just something that I've thought about, and, you can comment if you'd like, but coming from New York originally, I've found that one of the reasons I love Vermont so much is that there's such a strong sense of community, and there's so many actors in that. It's VPR, it's our local farms, and all sorts of things that people want to be engaged. They want to support fellow Vermonters, and I've found that VPIRG, just in the act of talking to people on their doorsteps, we contribute to that in a way that people want to be connected. And we do that. We bring that to their doorsteps. And then the other way, we work to make sure that our democracy is as representative of the people as possible. So,
Totally. I mean, there's been times I've had constituents who, I've had my door knocked down by VPIRG as a state rep, but I've also had constituents who have called me after they've had their door knocked down by VPIRG and said, so, how do you feel about, this policy around accountability for elected officials? And I'm like, wait a minute, didn't we just get knocked on by someone who was saying something very similar to that by a VPIRG canvasser? So it definitely mobilizes people to also think about the political system, even if it's not just through VPIRG. It's they realize that, oh wow, I have a person or an institution that needs to hear from me. So I think it does actually empower people to go like, oh yeah, I need to actually reach out, and I do have an opinion on that issue.
It's great to hear that impact. Well, unless you have anything else to add, either of you, we can wrap it up. I do want to make just a quick note about, our virtual canvas this year. We're not knocking on doors. It's really heartbreaking for our canvas team, but also, just really having a large impact on our organization in general. So if you get a phone call or an email or whatever, be sure to keep those at the ready, because we have around 20 canvassers, largely just veterans from former years, that are phone banking and sending emails and doing all that wonderful stuff to inform people about our 3 V's campaign: voting, vigilance, and values. I know, it's very pithy.
Nice.
3 V's.
Yeah, right now the big one is the first, voting, and ensuring that we have vote by mail instituted by August and November, and that's really timely. Actually, that decision has to be made pretty quick. So hoping that the governor supports that and the Secretary of State as well. And then, just making sure big corporate interests aren't using this crisis that we find ourselves in to line their own pockets, which we're already seeing happening in a lot of rollbacks at the federal level. But there's always things that we can do to prevent it and push back. So that's what we're up to. And though the canvas is not as traditional this year, we're learning and adapting, and we'll be back hitting doors next year. But would either of you like to add anything before we go?
Just a huge thanks to you, Maeve, and the team. I understand these are challenging times, and I really appreciate you putting this together and continuing to serve the community in new and innovative ways. And it's great, Becca, to work with you as well. Thanks for your role at the state.
Thanks. Very well said, Ashley. Yeah, the only additional thing I would say is if there are canvassers who are thinking, gosh, what am I going to do this summer? I mean, there's a lot of virtual tools that I'm sure you're working on that can maybe not have the same face-to-face impact, but will be just as long-term impactful. So I appreciate that you're still doing the work. Thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you both. And I hope you continue to stay safe and healthy out there. And I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Maeve. Nice to meet you.
Bye.